It was just a couple of weeks ago that we talked about a long lost and little known, if known at all, Atari prototype from the very beginning days of the 2600 called Sonar. You might have seen it here if you've been watching GenXGrownUp. It's kind of battleship-like, and you're a couple of ships on an open sea with a sonar ping listening for a return. It was intended to be stereo, but it never got finished or released because Atari didn't have stereo. And we only have that game in our collections now thanks to a longtime retired Atari R&D engineer who was selling off some old Atari stuff in boxes to Atari enthusiasts who are diligently digging through that stuff to see what relics could be in there. Well, at the time I did that video, I think I said something to the effect of, one of the most exciting things about Sonar was it makes me wonder what else might be out there from the very early days of the Atari. Well, wonder no more. Just the other day, another prototype from very early in the life of Atari. This one is kind of circa like April of 1978, which puts it less than 6 months, or right at 6 months after the release of the Atari 2600 in September of '77. This game is called Snark. It was made by somebody you've probably already heard of, and I'm going to tell you where to get it and how to play it right after this. This video supported in part by...
Playing VR, I tend to sweat. It gives me an edge. So King of Nerds happens to give me an edge too. Let King of Nerds give you the edge. Bye, King of Nerds.
Hey there, welcome back to GenXGrownUp. I am John and I am a GenXGrownUp. Thank you for the click. It was just back in 2000 when former Atari... Just back in 2000, which is now over 20 years ago. Wow. It was just back in 2000 when former Atari developer John Dunn said in an interview that he recalled working on a game called Snark, but as far as he knew, it was never released. We know it was never released. As far as he knew, there were no existing copies still around that anybody could pick up on, but he described it as kind of a tank game, shooting at a ball game kind of thing, but that was it. It was just a mention and nothing ever happened. Well, I mentioned that Sonar game that was discovered last year in this lot of things from an Atari R&D engineer. In that same lot of stuff, now discovered and released, was a little printed circuit board that had a little paper sticker on it, and that sticker said Snark. As it turns out, this is in fact the game written by John Dunn. Now, you might have heard the name John Dunn before. It's because as soon as he stopped working on Snark, he went straight into working on Superman for the Atari 2600, based on the original code for Warren Robinette's Adventure, and that's the Superman we all know and love. So this game, Snark, is literally what John Dunn put down to pick up Superman and get to work. So what is Snark? It definitely fits in the range of the kind of early Atari 2600 games you would expect. When you launch the game, you're presented with this simple maze and two tanks, a red tank and a blue tank, and in the middle is a single white dot, and that is the Snark. The object of the game is to shoot the Snark to gain points, but don't get hit by the Snark or hit by your opponent's bullets. You're going to rack up 3 points for every time you shoot that Snark, lose 5 points every time you get hit, and you'll lose a point if your opponent hits you. You can see from this footage that it is a pretty frenetic game with a lot of moving parts and a lot of stuff going on simultaneously. It can be pretty easy to get confused by what's going on screen, but I will say that though this is a prototype, it's almost just a prototype in name only. As far as the people over at Atari Age can tell, and in my playtest, this game seems pretty much done. Now, there do seem to be some little bugs that I noticed. I felt that score wasn't right all the time. One time I got hit by the Snark and lost all my points. These are minor little bugs. It's not the kind of thing that would stop you from playing and enjoying this game. It certainly didn't stop me from doing it. Now, just one way that I'll illustrate how complete Snark feels to me is to talk about all the game variations that are already built in to the game. Now, first of all, you have the option for your bullets to be continuous, meaning each tank has a bullet, and once you fire it, normally it would just run out of gas and expire and you'd have a bullet again. Well, in continuous bullet mode, you have one bullet that is just going to go forever until you catch it. Like it's like a boomerang or Thor's hammer or something, right? Once you throw it, you don't have it again until you go and catch it again so that you can fire once more. And that makes for a chaotic game of 2 bullets and a Snark bouncing all around for you to dodge because you want to catch your bullet, but you don't want to get hit by anything else. The next thing, which is really impressive, is that this has a single player mode. Now, many of the early Atari games had no AI of any kind, so the best you could do was just play with a friend or make up a way to play a two-player game by yourself. Challenge yourself for target practice or something. But this one has AI built in it. In the one-player mode, what they do is they eliminate the tank, and all that's flying around is your opponent's bullet. So you play that blue tank and the bullet is flying around. It can still score, it can still hit you, and you have to avoid that while you're trying to catch that Snark with your bullet. And I get the feeling that Dunn really wanted to make this a crazy, frenetic kind of game, because the last thing he included was something called video spin mode. Now, before I show you this, if you are susceptible to seizures from flashing lights, close your eyes for a second. I'll tell you when I'm done looking at this. So close your eyes. Here's the video spin mode. It's just constant flashing all the time of the background, no matter what's going on. And whether you get seizures or not, this is not easy to look at. I mean, it's just hard to play because it's chaotic. Okay, if you closed your eyes, you can open them now. I didn't want anybody to experience any problems watching my video here. So let's talk about the experience of this game. For me, I feel it fits right in the wheelhouse of those early Atari 2600 games. It's incredibly blocky. At first glance, it just looks like combat pretty much with this little map. Periodically, it just jumps for a weird set of circumstances that you can read about in the links that I'll give you. But it'll jump to a more complicated map where it's hard to navigate and shoot the Snark. And every time you shoot the Snark, you get reset. I mean, it just feels like there were parts of this game that hadn't been fully thought out. And maybe that contributed to why it didn't get released. But what this game does have, and for my part, is it's fun. I was playing it together with my wife. She had the second controller, and we were just screaming like, look out, watch out, oh my God, what are you doing? It's one of those games where as soon as it's over, you get that one more game kind of thing where you want to try it again because you're sure you could do a little bit better. And that's what those early games kind of did, and did well. But let's talk then about maybe why this didn't get released. Well, first of all, there's that chaotic video spin flashing thing. So again, close your eyes because I'm going to do some B-roll. This is just bananas. And Atari themselves told Dunn, we can't do that because you can induce seizures in people. Now, there's no reason they couldn't just take that out. Okay, you can open your eyes again, by the way. I'm done showing that. And I won't show it anymore, by the way. I'm done showing that crazy mode. That could easily have been removed if in fact that was the problem and left you with just a few other variations. No reason not to do that. It could possibly be the control scheme. I found the control scheme to be unintuitive. And when you play it, you'll see what I mean. You hold down the button and aim the stick, and then you release the stick, not the button, in order to fire. And it's kind of, in my first 5 or 6 plays, you have to consciously think about how to do that, or you will not fire over and over because it's kind of counterintuitive. That could have been changed, certainly. There's no reason you didn't have to. They even implement the difficulty mode settings, and the difficulty mode makes it so hard to play. It makes the walls sticky. So you'll know in Adventure when you run along a wall, you just kind of bounce along the wall. Well, in sticky mode, when you have difficulty set to the expert mode, the only way to get off a wall is to pull back against it. So you can't like slide around a corner, and it just gets you stuck on walls and corners. It's garbage to use. You got to leave that off because it just makes it so difficult to play. Or maybe it was just that in playtesting, this just wasn't up to snuff. Maybe it just wasn't quite fun enough. Certainly there were playtesters, I would expect at any, video game, especially, at Atari, they were trying to satisfy all these kids. It could be that they played it and found that with kids or the certain demographic or whatever, maybe it was too frenetic, or maybe it was not fun enough, or whatever. I read several comments on the Atari Age page I'm going to link to, and people said they just didn't find it enjoyable. I did find it fun, but maybe I'm finding it fun because I'm loving getting my hands on this 40-plus-year-old Atari game that I was never supposed to have. That may factor in and could have been part of it. Or maybe it's just that John Dunn had to get to work on Superman because he had a deadline and they just never got back to it, because after Superman, John Dunn was out of there. He didn't even stick around Atari. So that could be why it got lost. Whatever the reason it was not released, the good news is now you can have it. And it's another one of those games that I'm so happy that I'm alive in an era where these things are coming out of the woodwork. They're percolating to the top, right? The stuff that we missed out on, that we were never supposed to see, we're able to get and play with as if it's a new game that we unboxed when we were 10 or 11 years old. That's what the experience would have been like had that been released. and it probably would have been released sometime in 1978 because it was just about done. Look, I'm definitely going to put links down in the description of this video to Atari Age, where you can download the ROM and play in Stella, or put it on a cart and play it on your 2600. Also a link to Atari Protos, where you can read more about all the details about the history of the game and how to play it. And of course, I will throw links over my shoulders here and here to other Atari homebrew and prototype coverage we've done here recently. I certainly hope you found something to enjoy in this video, and I can't wait to talk to you again. Bye-bye.